Okay. So the only remaining problem is the priority problem. Now, everything else we've done so far has basically just been adding a new layer of indirection into a system that already worked. This was a little bit more complicated than that, but basically another layer of indirection that prevents you from having to swizzle yourself, and instead having you specify the pattern of your swizzle and iterating via that pattern when pulling out data. This right here, it's nothing. The ability to create them separately, indirections so that we could reuse the marker data without having, whenever we wanted to have different types of visualizations on the same object. View key already existed, just moved into the indirection. So this is the only thing that isn't really an indirection, but really affects the render rule itself. Now the question is, how do we pull it off? A couple of options. I could have a thing where I just go in there and hack in, like, however the system works now, when we look at what we want to go to draw. Well, first of all, there's a decision to make. I have these different priority levels, but there's also the priority level of, like, do line highlights ever go above anything, or are they always behind other highlights and cursors and stuff? I think the rule should be line highlights go in the layer behind everything, then range highlights in front of that, cursors in front of that, then text, and then wireframes, and then I-bars. And that's the order it's in right now. So if I go with that theory, then the only thing that would change is when I'm selecting which, if I have two different cursors that I can play right now, or two different lines that I could display right now, I choose which one to display based on a priority rule. And so for each of these things I say, here's the color I currently have, and the priority that it's at. And if a thing with a higher priority comes along, then I switch to that one. For ranges, it'll be a little bit more complicated than that, but for all the one-off things that happen in a sort of consume whatever things exist at this position that would affect it, and apply them. And what you would do for those cases, for those types of things, is just say keep consuming and keep the thing with the highest priority. For ranges, we're going to need something more complicated anyway to handle different overlapping types. And so we'll treat ranges as a separate problem that maybe we'll have a depth buffer or something like that. Because we already are going to do a pass over ranges later. So if we get the priority wrong for ranges, it won't matter because everything about ranges is changing. So let's get priority right for everything else. The first thing we have to do to get priority right is when I'm filling these things here, I need to put the priority level in. Now, given a particular visuals data piece, there's one possible sort key for priority across all of the markers that it touches. Yoshimoto555, yeah, I think we've talked about this a long time ago. I just haven't updated the build since we last talked about it. But I believe the thing is fixed where the buffer our map IDs don't change. Let's take a look. It might have been someone else who noticed that problem, now that I think about it. But let's see. Map ID, get map index. Yeah, I remember what it was. So yeah, it'll be fixed in the next upcoming build. Basically, the problem is so there are user maps and built-in maps. And what was happening, if I'm remembering correctly, was basically there's an array of user maps, and you can see there's a user map count here. And what would happen was that you would say set the thing, and if we go to get map index, it was like it would do this work here, and then if it failed, if it failed to find what it was looking for, it would return 0, I think, even though 0 is a valid ID. So it was not actually correctly reporting that it couldn't find what it was looking for, if I'm remembering correctly. Basically, you put in your map ID here, it would check the table, and then it'd come to the end and go, I didn't find what I needed, return 0. And then 0 is actually a valid user map ID, and then it would use that map. So now it should be fixed, because you can see if we are iterating across here and it doesn't find anything that fits and that matches what it's looking for, it returns 1 past the end of the table. And 1 past the end of the table will be too big right here, and so it'll give you this setting. But if you use the proper thing, it'll fit. That doesn't quite explain. There was something else going wrong. There must have been. Maybe it was in the add, getter add somehow. There was something broken with this system that I believe is fixed. In fact, I have like a thing right here now. This can run, and so I set the buffer map ID with this, query it with this, and then assert that I got the right thing to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So this is working now. Hope that this is enough to satisfy you that I've got it working. But it was definitely broken. There's no question about that. Okay, so we want to look at the priority sorting thing. So we are storing the priority information right there. That's good. Everything has the same priority for now. But what's going to change is when we go to pick the different highlights. So like highlight color. Line scanning, wrap scanning, token scanning, line marker colors. Yeah. So I'll do lines in a minute. I'm going to do the easy ones first. So character block, marker highlight. So it starts off at 0. What I want to do is I want to put in a priority thing that's like marker highlight best priority equals min I32. Wireframe best priority and I-bar best priority. Then what we do is while we're iterating here, we look at the marker, and if the marker priority is greater than our marker highlight best priority, then we update both. Now, lower priority things that come in won't override higher priority things, right? Highlight range is too complicated. We're doing it later. Okay. Marker priority is greater than marker highlight wireframe. Marker wireframe best priority. And then iBar. Man, I put on Crypto the Necrodancer in case anyone's wondering, and it's such a jam in OSC. Okay, so that at least gives us priority for those cases. Now I want to focus on lines because that one's a little bit easier than highlights, so we can get that one right still. How does lines work, though? I need to remember. If it's a new line, then we clear the old line color. And then what? Why do we even do that? Right, because it's for wrap lines. So if it's a new line, then we do this work to find out the new value of the line marker's color, right? This figures out the color of the line. Then then what happens is that gets spammed out to all the things that happen. So this is where we're deciding what the color should be from a marker. This down here, this is deciding a color from a marker. This line here is just making sure that every subsequent wrap from there, like if I click right here, for instance, you'll see the idea is that the whole textual line gets highlighted by a single line marker, not just the wrap you're on. This is actually super helpful in a lot of cases I have found. I'm glad we made this call to do it this way because this makes it very easy for you to be like reading compilation errors that are super long and wrap several lines. Well, now you can just, it highlights the part you're reading and your brain just doesn't blow up. It's amazing. So, or at least mine doesn't. It helps so much. So to preserve this the way it's working, all we want to do is apply the priority right here. Visual line markers best priority. Alright, now to test this, what I have to do is I'm going to zoom over to the default hooks, and we're going to use compilation errors to test this in particular. Yeah, so right here is where we set the line highlight. We're going to set the priority on this visual, on these marker visuals. On this marker visual. I should switch it to singular, shouldn't I? It's a single marker visual. So, alright, I want to set the line visual priority to low. So it'll be below the normal, the default. Okay, now to test this, I just need to have something with some build errors. I believe we left some build errors sitting around right here for that purpose. We didn't. Okay, that's fine. We can introduce some build errors again. Perfect. Okay, so now my line goes underneath the error. You see that? That's not the way it used to work. Cool. So, let's change something up. That's with it at low. Let's put it on highest. There, and now I go above it. Good, 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 good. So that's working for lines. What about for those guys? Let's set down here. Let's set the marker visuals priority here to highest. And so now it should be the case that, yeah, my cursor gets overridden by the marker, the marker that's highlighting the range. You see that? Okay. Now what I should actually do, of course, is reserve highest for the following things. Highest can go to the line at the cursor and these people right here. This one, this one, this one, and this one. King Konga, if you want to know which song this one is. It's definitely the jammingest of all the soundtracks as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And now our cursor overrides. There we go. Okay, so I'm convinced priority is working. So that means if we come back here, we can check out our to-do list, and I'm happy that all of this, I'm happy to say all of this has turned out the way I want. I still want to do some renaming, but I'm going to put that down here. I can do that in free time during the week. Okay, so now we need to deal with the range stuff. And we want to add the range of highlights if we can, so that we can get the scopes to be better. So, a couple of things about this. Like we already talked about this quite a bit earlier today, but we're here now. So the basic problem is this. Suppose I have a couple of ranges. Let me add this so that stops happening. Suppose I have a range called 1 and a range called 2. They could be organized like this. 1 starts, 1 ends. 2 starts, 2 ends. Right? They could be organized like this. 1 starts, 2 starts, 1 ends, 2 ends. They could be organized like this. 1 starts, 2 starts, 2 ends, 1 ends. Those are basically the three major cases, right? We have ranges that just we end a range and then there's no range happening, and then we start a different range and that range is happening. We start a range, and then in the middle of it, a different range takes over, and our first range ends before we ever see it again. And then this range ends later. And then we start a range, a different range starts, this different range ends, but then we should resume one. And this is the trickier one, because in these ones we can just go, the state is 1, and then the state is empty, and then the state is 2, and then the state is empty. Here we can go, the state is 1, the state is 2, ignore that because it doesn't match the state we're in, the state is empty. But if we see this one, using the algorithm I have implemented so far and the one I just described, it goes, we start, state is 1, state is 2, state is empty, but state should be 1 again. And the reason this is hard is because our ranges are sorted, right? I don't have like an array of here's each range. What I have is here's the beginning of something by its ID, here's the end of something by its same ID. Once I'm past this in the array, I've read this begin spot, and then I'm here, what should my state be? I would have to look backwards and see if there are any unclosed opens that I'm still inside of. I can't just use a stack for this, because if I use a stack, what happens in this case? I have to go into the middle of my stack and erase stuff out the middle. So it becomes this more like just array of things that currently exist, with the thing at the top always the thing that's most recent. I'm ignoring the question of priority right now, because that's separately difficult to deal with. So basically, the sub-priority rule is things that start later get priority over things that start earlier, and I think the super priority rule would be that higher priority comes first. So if we have like this is high and this is low priority, then the 1 range would overwrite the 2 range. If they're equal priority, that's the only time that we don't use priority to answer the question, and instead we go by which one started first. Right? Now, what I suggested would be the right idea is we have a range. We have like n is the first character, m is the last character that we're trying to render. That means that the size of our range is just m minus n. It's not going to be very big. That's going to be like less than 1,000, maybe 10,000, I don't know. It's never going to be super big. It's going to be small enough for us to do something smart with. In particular, it's going to let us do this. Allocate buffer of this size, and then what we can do is basically clear to 0, and then for each range render onto B the range with, the range's settings. Right? That's basically the idea. Then once we've got that, we have a buffer that tells us what the color of the highlight is at each the highlight layer should be, what the color of the highlight layer should be at each character. And so when we're looping, we'll just go highlight range color equals B index. I think this is the way I actually want it to work now. This is the way that will make it easier for us to get priority correct, and the sub-priorities based on who started and ended at different times correct. In order to actually do this, we'll need a separate buffer that's the depth buffer. And there we go. It's basically one-dimensional rendering. That's all that's going to happen here. We ready to try it? Just considering if there's any problems that'll come up. So for this to work, a couple of things we need to know about. First of all, this involves an iteration over the ranges. Right now, like I said, we're actually sorting our ranges like this. So if we have a range, an array of ranges that's like a range 1, range 1, range 2, range 3, range 4, the beginning and end points of those ranges get split off from each other and sorted out like this. And that doesn't make it great for rendering like this. So what we probably want to do is we have a couple of options. So one thing is we could change the format of the marker, render marker. Instead of making it 2, we could make it this with a pointer to its end position. Then we could still sort by the position, start positions with all the other markers, the way we already do. And then when we're going along, when we see new markers, when we see new things, we can adaptively render to the buffers if we wanted to. But why would we want to do that? We would only want to do that so that we didn't have to sort out the render ranges, but I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to sort out render ranges. Okay, yeah, so what we want to do is we want to update our sort into separate ranges. Visual markers segment sort. We're now making 3 segments. But there's a different option. I could do everything through a system like this. So hear me out. What if instead of just doing that, we did b equals allocate one-dimensional buffer, render target, whatever, right? And then what would happen would be we would do, this doesn't quite work. We would need a separation between lines and indices. But for all the things that are not lines, this would work. We would do for each marker, switch on the marker type, and then we would have like case block would mean, you know, render a block, and a range would just be render a range onto BD marker position, like, I don't know, marker, right? To simplify more, it's more just like BD marker. This will be like render to highlight texture or buffer or whatever. What if that's our basic idea? Okay, this wouldn't account for wireframes or I-bars, but for cursor blocks and for ranges it would work. So we would still kind of want wireframes and I-bars separated. Another thing is, though, if we do this, we don't need this sorted. We wouldn't sort it at all. We would leave them unsorted. No, we would still want them sorted so that they come through in priority order in terms of which thing has happened most recently. Yeah, the sub-priority of the ranges. Okay, I feel like doing 3 segments is the best idea for now. When I hyper-optimize in the future in the new engine, I'll probably get this whole thing down to a couple of render targets, one for like blocks, one for wireframes and I-bars somehow, and one for lines, and then just fill them out. There are a bunch of really small buffers that you just render to them and then sample out of them later. Yeah. And that wouldn't even need to necessarily be GPU rendering. That's not what I'm saying. But it could be. I mean, there's no reason that wouldn't be possible with a better rendering technology. I don't know. Anyway, point is, yeah, so this is currently separating it out into 3 segments. That's the way it's going to work. Well, the code separates it into 2, but I've got 3 segments now. We're going to use 3 segments. And so it's going to go character markers, line markers, and then range markers. Okay, now let's go up to the segment sort. This is no longer going to work. I made a note of that when I was making it, that this won't work if we go to 3. So, it's gone. How do we sort an array of 1s, 2s, and 3s? How do we do it? Before, what I was doing was squeezing in from both sides and swapping one at a time. I could do that again and just get all the 1s to one side and the 2s and 3s on one side and then do that again. If I was going to do that, I should have kept the code. That would still be O of n, which is why I like it. Okay. Okay, so the way this needs to work is at each step we're going to segment rank. Okay, marker visuals type. Switch on type. line highlights. There we go. So there gives us our segment rank, and what we can do is say I'm going to call this split sort, and it works like this. Wait a minute, why doesn't quicksort work that way? It basically does. I mean, it should work this way, but it's the same thing. This just does half the iteration work that does. Okay, I just learned how to make quicksort faster. Okay, min and high segment, and then what we're doing is we're grabbing the rank of this, and we're saying if I1 is still less than 1 past last, keep moving up. So we go to segment rank and we say if I1 is incrementing forward, so we say as long as that's true, that is as long as this is less than the min in high segment, then I plus 1. This one is the same thing, except with a negation. So it's as long as this is greater than or equal to min and high segment, and then we swap them, and then we keep searching forward until we find the next ones that are out of place, or until we go, oh, we've passed each other, and then we're done, and then we return the split. And the split is just I1. Yeah. markers, first pose, one pass last, I plus 1, first pose, first pose, Okay, so what this will do is it'll fill 3 ranges. In the future, oh, I should probably get this part right, shouldn't I? I mean, this is kind of dumb. What I should really do is just this. Okay, so splits I dot 1 pass last equals first pose. Splits I plus 1 equal dot first equals first pose. And then after all the iterations, the only one we won't have set is the one where max visual or type rank dot 1 pass last equals 1 pass last. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now, if I pop over here, segment sort grabs those 3 segments and boom, boom, boom. Cool. Which will basically mean that lines just don't show up anymore right now, because I'm not doing anything with range markers, and the range markers won't be here like they used to be. And so if everything works, it should all look exactly the way it used to, except that ranges don't show up at all. Okay, that all looks the same, but if I do this, okay, we're good. So now what we want to do is a special behavior for the range markers. And the special behavior is we're still going to sort them, so it's fine that they go through this quick sort here, but we want to change some things about them. So let's pop over here. We're no longer going to do this range ID thing. Instead, we're going to do end pose, or one past last position or something. And then when we're filling these things, one past last position is just irrelevant for this. We don't even read it. But for this, one past last position, we won't need to do 2 of these. We'll only do 1. Which means that's no longer necessary, which is nice, because it was kind of gross. And then there. So both positions from the pair get baked into one render marker total. Then the render markers get sorted by their first positions, but their last positions are carried along with those first positions. They don't move around. Well, they get copied around as a pair, basically. The pairs are getting sorted by their first positions. So at the end, we have a sorted array of first positions and unsorted last positions. But that's what we want so that we can get the priority rule right that we want. So let's see. With that in place, I think the next trick is to set up the render target for the ranges thing. Render the range color buffer. So first we need to figure out how many of these things do we need. Like, how big does the buffer need to be? Well, we could say that it doesn't need to start until the very first starting position of the first range, and maybe along the way we could also ask what's the last position in the range and use just that much. That would make it even smaller than it already is. It would also complicate the indexing situation, but I feel like it's a good technique. Except that it's possible that those are off-screen, actually. Okay, let's go with the screen. What stuff is actually on the screen? We already have an idea of what ranges we're looking for here. Get visual markers. Okay, this one right here. On-screen range. Just said that thing is gone. Okay, so now we know the length of the on-screen range, so we're going to go range color buffer size equals on-screen range dot one past last minus on-screen range first. Then what we're going to do is say, okay, we want an array of U32s. Range color buffer. Let's try it this way. Now there might be cases where this actually just is a bad idea that I shouldn't be doing, because it's possible that the amount of stuff that's on screen is not humongous, but the amount of stuff that's like on screen, if you count things like really long lines that go on for a mile to the right, are so big that it's like 100,000 and it'll blow past the end of our arena or something. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if that would happen or not. I mean, I know that that case can come up, but I don't know how big that has to get before it happens. It can't get bigger than 65536 on a single line, but if it's 65536 for all of these lines, and the reason it can't get bigger than that for a single line is 4coder forces a wrap at that point. Even on unwrapped buffers, I should point out. Okay, the other thing we want here is a... Let me see, how do we want to do this? So we're going to memset the first one to 0. Then what we're going to do is grab range depth buffer. And that one, what we want to do is initialize it all to min I32. Min I32 can't be done with memset, so it's I think that's an okay thing to do. And then what we want to do is visit all of the ranges. Ugh, I keep forgetting to use the new stuff that speeds me up so much. By the time I've remembered to do it, I've, you know, made it such that it's not faster. Gotta develop that habit so I can be speed demon still. Okay. I feel like it's getting dark. I want to add some light to the room, so give me a sec. Okay. So now we're visiting each range, and with each range what we're going to do is we're going to, we're basically rendering here, so we're going to say what happens here is we go marker render marker equals markers plus range markers 2 dot first one pass last, and then oh wait, no, that's wrong. Those can just be range markers. That's right. Okay. And then we want to increment our marker. Okay, and now we can render it. So the render is going to go like this. For each marker we find, we want to spam out the color across the range set by this, using this as the priority and doing a depth comparison against this buffer here. So that's going to be there we go. So we do a quick iteration over that array, and what we want to do actually is more like this. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to clamp both of these. So clamp bottom so the bottom we want to clamp from is on screen range dot first. Actually, it's more like 0 and then subtract on screen range first. And this is minus on screen range first, and then we clamp top. Well, what we could do is more like this. On screen range dot one pass last minus on screen range first, right? And so now we're getting a range from first to one pass last in the coordinates of the buffer. And so we can do if range depth buffer j is less than, we want to pull out the priority, is less than the priority, then range depth buffer j equals the priority, and range color buffer j equals, we want to pull out the color. Okay, this and this should go like that. Okay, that makes it cooler. So now what's happening? We're pulling out the color and the priority, and we're using that across the entire range of the legal space of the buffer that we can, to say, hey, can I write this thing in here? And if it says yes, then it does. Only trick is we want to have a less than or equal to policy, not a less than policy. That way things that happen later override things that happened earlier, even if they're at the same priority. if I insist on making... Yeah, that would be better. Zero the lowest priority, I was gonna say. If I insist on making 0 the lowest priority, then we can switch to that, which is preferable. Okay, I don't know what that's all about. That's obviously wrong. Range buffer size times size of I32. Well, U32. Okay, so now this is just garbage. Shouldn't even be possible for that case to ever happen, so it should go to this default invalid code path. Okay, cool. So now we have this thing here that does this render the range color buffer thing. I want to run and just see if we actually have enough memory for that on a full screen view of a file. I can't imagine that we don't in normal cases, because it's kind of silly how little data there actually is, but it could still be big enough to be a problem. Uh-oh. How did we end up with the sort on the segments going wrong? Okay. Tell me about the segment sort. Close this panel, and now, I don't know, pull open indents. Yeah, and that makes it break, so I can't actually see what's happening when it happens. Instead, let me just do it this way. Boom. 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 Okay, let me see markers. No, not that. Get out of here. Get. Okay, we're looking for a 3, and there's a 3 right here. Now let me look at the line markers real quick. What does that have to say for itself? Come on. Work with me here. So this has a 1 and a 3, so it's got both of these in it. And range markers has nothing. So this sort is way wrong. The 3 should be here, right? Well, not even. The 1, wait. This is way, way wrong. I don't understand how we ended up in this situation at all, if I'm being totally honest. Let me check a few things. Line highlight is a 3. Okay. So yeah, this is fine. Whereas highlight ranges is a 2. So highlight ranges doesn't even exist. We have 1s, 4s, and 3s. These should all be in a group together. Which they are. 4, 4, 4, 1, 1, and then 3. The problem is just that the split points are coming out in the wrong spot. There we go. That's what I can do to catch this while it's happening. Oh shit, I just ruined it. Okay, so now what we want to do is look at split sort. So I1 and I0, where are they? Okay, so it stopped at 2. 2 is the first place where it found a large something that should go far past the end. Oh shoot, that should be an I0 right there. 602. Okay. So yeah, this is working. That's cool. So if token.start is less than next line start, does all this work, and then if this indent is less than 0, this indent equals 0 at the end. I see. Very easy to... You see that? It's often a pain in the butt to figure out that those go together and that this happens after this without this thing. I'm probably the only person in the world who really, really needs this shit, because look at how bad my code is. Look at that. Look at how deep that goes. It's not supposed to go that deep. That's 12 steps deep, if you didn't know, because it's cycling for each, so 1 red, and then there's a second red here. There's a third red here, and then it does 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know? This is 13 indents. Or is it 12? No, it's 12 indents. I don't know what it is. Let's just look. Okay, 12. Okay, so now what? Well, one thing we didn't do was test what happens if I start putting highlight ranges down. Okay, no crashes, so that's a good sign. Now I want to see what happens if I try to set the highlight range color by sampling out of the buffer. No, don't crash. Not sure why the one at work hasn't been crashing at all. So whatever version I'm running here has some critical bug that I've fixed since the version I updated before the version I started using at work. Huh. Don't know. Alright, so what we're going to do now is if marker highlight equals 0, that's the only one we're interested in, then that means we didn't set the character block from up here, and so instead we're going to look into the buffer. Let's see, how do I get the index though? That's a good question. So I guess it's the item index minus the on-screen range dot first. There it is. That worked. Now what's cool about that is it means now I can do this. Alright, so right now we're grabbing a character block. We're using character blocks to mark those ranges. But what happens if I do character highlight ranges now? I wonder. Obviously, readability suffers, but look at that. That's so cool. Okay. So, here's the next step. Obviously, we want to work on the readability. And I think the first step towards readability is going to be to make the ranges work like lines in this case, basically. So basically the problem is these are ranges, and ranges that span multiple lines are always going to look odd like this because they don't, when it goes past the end of the line, it doesn't all the way off to the side, and when it hits here, it doesn't in there. Furthermore, it's strange because you don't necessarily want like red and then green, right? Finally, it's strange because when we highlight something, it automatically makes the text white, which is why we are now going to start focusing on text color as well. So, of those things, what should we do first? We got to get them all done. The most difficult of them is going to be the lines as ranges, so I think we should start there. Make sure that that's feasible. The rest of it makes me less nervous. Now, there's a couple of things I'd like to observe to make sure this is making sense. For one thing, look, it doesn't cover the brace right there, and that's because I subtract one from the one past last, so it's actually everything up until that brace, but not including it. That made sense when I was marking the two braces, but in this mode, it doesn't quite feel right. Of course, this mode doesn't feel right anyway, but if... no, I think actually that's the right thing to do, because when we switch back to lines, we would want it to be on the line where the brace is, and so putting it on the brace directly makes more sense, maybe. Yeah. So, let's do lines so that this makes, like, blocks. This is so exciting. Look at that. Lag testing, not seeing much trouble. I don't think. Maybe I am seeing trouble, I don't know. That feels a little bit slower, and then that feels fast right there. Like, when there's less of it on screen, it feels faster for some reason. So maybe this is actually suffering from a lag problem, too. I don't know. Could be a lag problem. Alright, so that's something we'll have to study before this ships, is if this is actually fast enough. Obviously the color choice is really poor too. You would want to choose your colors based on the color palette to look nicer. Okay. I want to try something here. What if I wasn't doing character highlight ranges, but I was just doing character blocks again? How does that factor into the lag thing? Also, how does OBS factor into the lag thing? Separate question. Yeah, so that's less laggy, which means we have a performance problem with this solution. I'm not sure where that performance problem is, but if I had to guess, it would be that it's got to be while we're rendering to the, like, iterating the ranges and rendering each one, right? That's just not fast enough, which I find somewhat surprising because there's only a few ranges, but I guess they have to, like, iterate something like a few hundred spots each, maybe 1,000 spots each, roughly, and then you end up with a slow render. It could be very aggressively optimized, it being such a simple render concept. It could be like 4-wided or something. Even threaded, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But this is definitely not suffering from the same lag, so I can't help but wonder, you know, if that was really super slow. I say. Alright, before we do anything, I would like to work on this performance situation. So, if I use the full ranges and I render to the buffer the way I was doing, it's just too slow. So let's think. What else would be a viable method to make this happen? I could make a linked list. Whenever one of these things ends, it knows how to remove itself from the linked list. And then we would go back to using 2 markers, sort them independently, but they would both have pointers to the same node somehow. I don't know how we would do that. But then we could make a linked list, and that would easily let us insert things on the top, remove things out the middle, and have sort of delete from middle stack. And however many ranges we have would just fix, I mean, if there's only a finite number of ranges on screen, so that's how many nodes you need. It's really not that big a deal. You allocate them before you start, and then you have one for each. It would work. You can also just start with one, like keep it at the way it is now, but add a node whenever one starts, and that node knows when it ends. So if it's at the top and it's already supposed to have ended, you pop it off and you go down further. And if it hasn't ended yet, then you keep it. Okay, that's a better method. Okay, this was a fun experiment, but it turns out that it's slower than I would have thought. So it's no good. It's still good up to the point where we have range markers. So instead of that method, what we're going to do is we're going to allocate one for each range of these nodes. And these nodes are going to look like this. How does this work with priority, though? I mean, this lets us keep track of which ones are currently active, but if we have one that has higher priority, then it needs to win, even if it's not on top. Or to put it another way, maybe we need to, whenever we're adding these things, always put them in priority order too. So when I add something, I want to add it to the highest point such that it is right below the next something with a higher priority than it. If nothing has a higher priority than it, then it goes on the top. If something in there already has a higher priority than it, it goes right there. That means inserting one of these would basically be a process of we look at the top, how high is its priority. If we're lower than it, we iterate down and keep doing so until we find something, find either the end of the list where we put ourselves at the bottom, or we find something where we are equal to or less than the thing we're looking at, and then we insert ourselves above it. If we had like 100 ranges active at the same time, then all of a sudden that becomes a slow iteration on a similar order to the way that the render was a slow process, but I bet the render was just slow because we were doing an unoptimized software render, and on a GPU engine type thing that would work really well, possibly. But I don't know how much I'd like to actually rely on the GPU. I'd have to run some experiments to see how good I can get it on like SSE2. And that even isn't necessarily what I want to be doing. Any other options for what to do with priority? I mean, if I organize this as an actual stack as an array, then I could binary search it. That's what we'll do. It doesn't even need to be nodes anymore. Okay. Alright, I don't actually know how exactly to do this part though. I guess I need a new scan index. Token scanning line markers colors, visual marker colors, highlight range marker color. So if we don't have a marker highlight, then what we're going to do is use the range highlight, right? Then we just do range highlight equals 0, and then what we do is we say if range stack top is greater than or equal to 0, then range highlight equals range stack top dot color, right? Okay, and then the only trick left is updating the stack. So what we want is something like this, except instead of this, we're going to use the new scan index, the scan index for ranges. Visual range markers scan index. It's less than range markers dot count range markers dot positions less than or equal to index, then visual range markers scan index plus equals 1. Render marker equals, give me the range markers dot range markers scan range visual range markers scan index. Okay, so that gives me the marker, and then what I do is I figure out what's the insert position. For now, I'll just say the insert position is at the range stack top, incremented up 1, and then range stack top is equal to my range record. What's my range record? My range record is this. There we go. So then I stick that into the stack, and then there we go. The only thing it doesn't do is properly set its priorities. It just always takes the thing off the top. But we'll have to just work on this part right here. And I guess what will actually happen is we'll do insert position, and then instead of just writing it right there at the insert position, what we actually have to do is shift everything up. So it'll be like move range stack insert position plus 1 range stack insert position okay, and then what we want to do is take the current top. Say we have 5 things and we're inserting at position 2, then the answer should be 3. So it's just that minus that. Wait, if we have 5 things, then our top would say 4. If we have 5 things, because here's my top at 0, here's my top at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this is when I have 5 things, the top is 4. If I'm inserting at position 2, I'm inserting so that these 3 shift up 1. So it's actually 4 minus 2 plus 1 that I want to do. So range stack top minus insert position plus 1. If insert position becomes 4, then I'm moving things into position 5 from position. If I insert at position 0, suppose I have 4 things, 0, 1, 2, 3. I insert at position 0. I should actually move 4 things over. Right? 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. 0, 1, 2, 3. We move 4 things up 1. And then we put ourselves here. Suppose I have this. Oh, if I have that. Right, so then this becomes 4 minus 5. If I'm inserting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm putting it at the very top, then I would get 3 minus 4 plus 1 is 0. Nothing would move, and then I would put that there. Okay, so this is correct. So the only downside to this is that insertion into the middle is costly, but it's only costly by a shift. Which is where the nodes would have helped, is for quickly inserting and erasing out of the middle. But we no longer are going to plan to erase out of the middle, because what we're going to do is we're going to say, after we've done everything else we do, as long as the thing on the top is retired, then we're going to take it off. Okay, so as long as we can remove something and the thing at the top should be removed, remove the thing at the top. Then, if we get to here and there's still something, then we have a range highlight and we take it. Finally, what we need to do is get the correct insert position. So how are we going to do that? That's a binary search. Let me see if I have a generic binary search sitting around. It looks like I do. Oof, it doesn't have a stride though. Okay. That's fine. We're just going to manually do this then. Okay, in order to find the insert position, we're going to have to do some binary searching. So, binary search. It's one of those things that if you got to implement a binary search once a day or you're not really living. It doesn't have to be binary search, it could also be a quick sort, a couple of other things, you know. Other good ones include like a find largest type thing, like find the object with the largest X in an array. Yeah, those are some basic ones. You might think hash table, but hash table is a little bit yikes for my taste. I want the algorithms that are like work out really nicely, you know? Those are the ones that are the most fun. So anyway, okay. If first plus 1 is less than 1 past last, if first plus 1 is less than 1 past last, then break out of the loop. We've found our answer. And while we're at it, set insert position to first. If, oh wait, otherwise we take mid equals first plus 1 past last over 2 if range stack mid dot priority is greater than so what we have, let me draw a picture of this, because this is not the kind of quick sort or binary search that's easy, it's the kind that's confusing. Wait, I want white. Give me black. Come on, black. Blacken it. Blacken it. Blacken it. There we go. Okay, so what we basically have is we have a stack that looks like this. We have records on the stack. I'm going to draw them like this. There's a record. There's a record. There's a record. There's a record. Now this is a stack that grows down. Okay, this is our direction of growth. Now, we want to find an insert position. Our insert position can be any of the following. So if we have a stack top of 4, then we have a count of 5, and we have the number of possible insert locations is 6. So this is why I said it gets confusing. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, means that 1 past last is 6. That's why it's plus 2. Now, any of these, because this has index 0 and this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 6 is the number that's 1 past the last possible insert position. Now, in order to evaluate an insert position, what we want to do is we look at that position and say what's above it and below it. If what's above it, right, if we get 1 and we go and look at 0, and this is too, if this is too small, we need to go smaller. Or if this is too big, then we need to go smaller. If this isn't too big, then we look at this one, and we look at position 1. If position 1 is too small, we need to go bigger, right? So if this one is too small, we go bigger. If this one's too big, we go smaller. If this one's not too big and this one's not too small, then this is where we want to stay. With the rule that we are trying to be exactly that it's too small. So the phrase too small and too big, what does that mean? Too small and then big. What does each of these mean? Too small means that it is less than or equal to myself. That means that other is less than or equal to me. Too big means that other is greater than me. So with that in mind, if I say look at this and it's too big, that means that this one has a larger key than me, and so I go below it. If I look at this one and I say it's too small, that means that it's less than or equal to me, and I should go this way. Yeah, so this one is considered smaller than me. I am bigger than anything equal to me when I am inserting myself into the list. So if I look at this, I go, that's too small, and then maybe I can check this one and find out, oh, this one is bigger than me, but this one is smaller than me. And the idea is we want to say, is this one, so we check small, question mark, at I, and we check big, question mark, at I minus 1. Now, the only weird exception to this rule is that if we're at 0, then our thing less than us becomes -1 and doesn't exist. This thing here is always, always smaller than us. And this thing here, which doesn't actually exist, is always, always bigger than us. So we have a special case that checks for this and this. Okay. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to check if we're too big or too small in one of those directions, or if we're in just the right spot. If mid equals 0, then I minus 1 is too big. If mid is greater than 0, then we take range record stack, or render range stack, range render stack. What is this thing called? Range stack mid minus 1 dot priority. And if that is too small, which is to say it's less than our priority, if that's less than if it's too small, it's less than or equal to our priority, I mean, then what's the move? If it's less than or equal to our priority, equal to our priority, then what we want to do is say we are too big. true. Or no, if it's greater than us is the question. If the thing below us is greater than us, then this position, it's too big, we should go smaller. Now we're also going to ask, is I too small? If mid is exactly equal to the last possible option, oh wait, if mid is less than the last possible option, then we look at this. And we say that if it's less than or equal to us, then too small. If we're too big, then we do 1 past last equals mid. We've just eliminated mid. It's mid, this position is too big, it can't be right. Software TV, yeah, this is a binary search, but it's not for sorting. The binary search is to, well, I mean, we're using a binary search so that we can insert something into a stack in order. So in a sense, it's for sorting. But we have basically a stack, and that stack keeps track of ranges of characters that can begin and end at random times, or like arbitrary times. And those ranges can have priority, so that if two ranges overlap and one of them has a higher priority, it should be at the top of the stack. So to handle all of that, what happens is when the range starts, it gets inserted into the stack at the position where its priority is in sorted order. And it gets inserted in front of all of the other things of equal priority to itself. So higher in the stack than things of equal priority. Then, when we want, before we pop anything off the stack, what we do is we read through the stack and say if the thing we have at the top of the stack has actually ended, because our record in the stack tells us when does this thing end. If it's actually already ended, then we pop it off and go one layer down. At the end of that process, whatever's left on the stack is the highest priority thing that has not yet ended, and so we use it for our range highlight color if the stack is still non-empty. And that's what we are wrapping up right now. Actually, I'm going to test if it works. Else, if too small, then first should equal mid plus 1, because we just eliminated this position as a possibility. We definitely have to go bigger. If neither of those happens, then we should break right now with insert position equal to mid. Alright, let's check that out. I gotta close Milton, it will cause lag. There we go. Now the next thing you see is not going to be a very impressive demo of the capabilities of this thing, because I forgot to do a couple things I just realized. Character highlight ranges. Okay. Yeah, that's not suffering from the same kind of performance problems as the other one was. So this is a much better way to do it. Cool. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to well, we got a couple of other problems to deal with regards to this scope highlighting thing. So, I think the next step is to get the lines part working. So right now it doesn't highlight the line range, it just highlights the text range, but that looks goofy and bad. So instead, what I would like to do is have it highlight, put down line highlights. Now there's questions about like how exactly that's going to work in terms of like, should this be a blue or a yellow line? You can see that in the text mode it's fully blue until that brace. The coolest thing would be if it was blue to here and then yellow from there till there and then blue again, but that could get kind of noisy, I think. I don't know. Probably would, and it would also not work the way any of our line highlighting stuff already works. So what we want next is I want to highlight the this line yellow, this line yellow, this line yellow, this line yellow, and then drop back down to blue. I'm not how exactly that's gonna work. We'll find out as we go. But like, I'd really like for this to be green highlighted so we can see the green scope ending there. And for all this to work, okay, the first thing we're going to need is a new type of marker visual, which is a line range, like range of line highlights or something like that, range of lines, and see if we can get that up and running. Now, I'm not sure exactly what we want to do in terms of segments here. So how would this work? I guess the way the line works is we put the lines into a segment, we sort that segment by itself, and then we take we do a loop that moves all of the indices to the beginning of the line that they're on. And then whenever we see a new line, we update by looking at that. So what will happen now is there are these ranges that are active. It'll be another range stack, basically, a separate one. So it's a different rank. It's basically both. Line highlight ranges. So there are now rank is the highest. 3 is the highest rank. And when we do the segment sort, we should be getting 4 segments. And the last one is the render marker, let's see, line range markers. Now I'm not sure that that's actually the right kind of record here. So we still want color, text color, one past last. I'm not sure if that, I guess that should be in, yeah, so that's going to get interesting. Okay, and now the other thing we want to look at is when we are outputting this, I think we want to output it as So let's see, the cases here are highlight ranges and line highlight ranges, and everything else will flow through here. Okay, now when I go to the line markers, I want to see when do the line markers get flattened. Okay. Markers, replace position with first byte of line. Okay, so how does this work? For each of them, if we have any markers, we make sure that the hint line index is good and that it's less than or equal to the first position. That wouldn't work if we had a range. So why are we asserting that? We're asserting that because I'm actually not sure why we're asserting that. I think it was just because we could assert it before and it was true, but it didn't need to be true for this thing to work. Yeah, because if this is not smaller than equal to less than or equal to this, then this will still be true on the first opportunity and give the same result. So let's eliminate this case, or this assert. Alright, now what's happening? Let's see. We look at the line scan index. It starts from the hint line index, and it first byte of next line, and then okay, the only problem here is that this works because it's sorted by position. So how would we set it to the first byte index of the next line? I don't think we could. Maybe we don't need to. Okay. Right, we don't need to. Okay. All it has to be is somewhere on that line, and it'll work, because it's in a range. Yeah, okay, I see it. So we're going to do this with line starts, or line markers. We're also going to do it with line range markers, yeah. I'm going to use those variables, okay? I just wanted to check if everything else worked. Yeah. Okay, so if we're on a new line, then we check to see what color this line should be. If we get to the end of this, visual line range markers color equals 0. And then if visual line markers color is still 0, then we can set that to this. And then we just have to find out what the line range marker's color should be. Right, that's how this works down here. Yeah. Okay. So if the line range stack there we go. That's pretty nice. So if the color we want to set is 0 and the stack has something in it, then we look at the line range stack, line range top. Perfect. Now all we have to do is make sure the line range stack is updated, the same way we do right here, which means we're going to want that binary search to be pulled out first of all. Visual markers range record stack get insert position index. It's a little bit much, right? Visual markers range record stack get insert index. There we go. Render markers count priority. So this is going to become range record stack get insert index. Range markers dot markers range markers count. No. Range. No. None of that is right. It's going to be range stack top plus 1 and priority range record dot priority. And then that code can come live over here. Don't need that anymore. Okay, so See if that works. Not sure what happened to the 4. It's a bit odd, don't you think? Fiber18, hey, yeah, I'm having a marathon day here. I think that I've had a total of 6 hours on stream today, which is pretty good for a stream day. It's pretty good for any work day, actually, for me at least. Get insert index. Okay, now we want code just like this. I keep forgetting that people can even see me bouncing around while I'm thinking. Alright, so here's line marker colors. This is where we're going to do line range marker color. Okay, now let's see. Visual range markers scan index. Line range markers, visual line range marker scan index. Grab a marker from the line range markers dot markers visual line range markers scan index. Grab a record, fill it out like that. Insert position from the line range stack. Line range stack. Top +1, line, okay, range record priority, sure. Line range stack, line range stack, line range stack, line range stack top, insert position +1,
line range stack, insert position. Line range stack top is greater than or equal to 0. Index is greater than or equal to range stack, line range stack top dot one past last, line range stack top minus equals 1. Visual line markers color equals 0, and line range stack top is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, I think that works. Alright, let's try this. This is line highlight ranges. There's some question about priority orders that I'm not sure how it will shake out. Like, who's going to trump at the boundaries? We want to make sure that we've wrapped that up in a nice way. It should always be the inner one. That's the rule, right? So if they're all the same priority level, the inner one should always win. We'll see. Uh-oh, crashy poo. Okay, well that's definitely not good. How do we get an insert position of 2000? $2,000? I know what that is. Okay, so thoughts. Thought number one, if you're going to turn this on, I would want the line highlight to somehow be different. I'm not sure how I would make the line highlight work, but I would want it to work differently. Second thought, it's not going down to the final line there. And I don't really know why it's not. I feel like you just turn the line highlight all the way off for this, because I mean the other option would be to figure out what range you're in manually and pick one of 4 colors that goes with it. Okay, let's figure out why it's not going down to the final line. I mean, like this one, for instance, I could imagine why. It's because it's actually at the beginning. And so let me try and change something and see if my theory even holds up. Software TV, yeah, that would be better if I could control it so that the line started at the indent. I don't have that kind of power yet. I'm just implementing what I can with the primitives that are easy to figure out so far. In the current engine, like, you know, exploratively, imagining how things might come together in a more full engine type deal. So I think I would want to find a different structure for that. If I was going to implement that feature, I would again want to go back to the drawing board for primitives and come up with something better than instead of trying to just fit it into this thing here, because this thing here doesn't quite... I don't know, it doesn't quite capture that the right way. I need to think about it some more. Okay, in the meantime, I can at least look at the line range stack top and ask what's going on here. Okay, that fixed it for all of them. Yeah, so I guess this is because I have virtual whitespace on, so these are all the first characters of that line, and if that's enough to turn it off, then it does, but it's one past last is the way it's encoded. So in this case, we're actually including that. It's like inclusive, not exclusive in the case of these lines, I guess. Now, some other things that might be nice include if it could stably highlight these even when my cursor isn't in them. So like this could get colored red, and then all the stuff in here would get colored properly, instead of you having to do this to see the way it unfolds. But yeah, that doesn't suffer any performance difficulty, which is a good sign. It's pretty loud as a feature, especially with these colors. So, the next thing we want to work on is, I'm not sure. We have better range handling and range of lines, though, so that's good. At some point, we should definitely be getting text color from render markers, and we should be looking at the rest of this to-do list and see if there's anything else we want to get to ASAP. Yeah, so these we can get done tonight. That we can get done tonight. We can get all of this done tonight, for sure. Those colors do have opacity. If you mean more opacity, we can do that, but it's not just that. Those are just hard-coded colors, and I need to switch to pulling them off of the color, like the color theme, so that I can actually tune it to this color theme that it's on. Like, if we check this out again, and I then do color tweaker, and we say, like, what about STB dark? It looks like that. That doesn't look very good either. What if it looks like this? Not helping at all. And so on. So hopefully you can kind of detect that there's alpha applied. This theme sucks. I need to work on it still. Yeah. But point is, I need to just tune these to the color theme, the color schemes that they're being used in. That will make the biggest difference on how it looks, I think. But even if it does get carefully tuned, I feel like it's just going to be so noisy. It's very interesting that we have this much power now, though. I feel like this is screenshotable. It's very interesting. Okay, so let's start getting through all this stuff. Text color from render markers. Let's make that happen. So right now I'm only grabbing the highlight color. There's no reason I should only be grabbing the highlight color. I could also be grabbing the text color. So first I want to figure out how do we, what color do we send down at the end? It's char color. Okay. Okay, let me think this through. So if those apply, if I say do default stuff, then I will just leave it to do default stuff. No, 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 no. Ugh, another crash. I'm not running on the most recent version of 4coder. I don't know why not, because it's almost certainly more crashy, the one I'm running, than the one that... Well, right now we have... if I have a compilation error, it'll put a red line on it. I don't parse it myself. I don't parse your code myself. Like, 4coder doesn't try to parse your code into text syntax errors. It just lets the compiler do that, but then it marks them for you. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we want to have... We have all sorts of things that can set the default color, and that includes this, which has to be done after this. So char color can't be affected here because it won't be finished computing till here. Here is where we know the correct value for char color. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to say U32 color marker text color equals 0. Okay, color highlight. Not sure, not sure. Actually, let me back this up. Let me go find out where color marker highlights. That might be where I want to do this. Okay, yeah, using the same rules. Get out of here. Okay, so now we have marker highlight text. Yeah, and another thing I should do is, once we have, oh, I didn't save that stuff, huh? Okay, this and this are done. Text in marker range, or highlights. Text color. And then another one was, did I have another thing right there before I crashed? I can't remember. Well, the other thing I need to do is text symbolic colors, or symbolic colors in general. Okay, so yeah, so we're working on text stuff. So if that was not 0, then override whatever this was with this, and then it does the fade blend there, and renders. Okay. Now that should make no difference because nothing ever sets that right now. But I want to try setting that, so let's try saying, I don't know, what's an example of something where it was doing something annoying that I wanted to change? Okay, so let's try, does it still have the line work that we did? Yeah, looks like it does. Okay. Line highlight ranges. Switch this back to character highlight ranges. And then I want okay, sorry for fading out there for a minute, thinking something through. So, if I do that, and instead of setting default here, I set black. Interesting. Okay, now obviously I don't actually want it to fully turn my text black when I'm on a theme that's already like dark background, but this is the first step. I can now control the color of text from the custom code. And it seems to have no performance implications if I do. Like, it doesn't hurt me at all to do that with this system. Okay. Now, we'll say that that's working, so now what we want to do is symbolic colors. The symbolic colors are defined right here. So if that does not equal default, then we're going to change it from the default. If this and that equals 0, else. Alright, so if I ask for transparent, then char color just goes to 0. Wait, are you telling me I don't have a way to go? How does... Style index by tag, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. So I have two style files that I generate, I guess. Fine. Just realized something cool. And what's cool about this is that I literally don't have to do any of that now to make it work. I was doing all that because I thought I would have to make it work, but it turns out I don't. So that's just as good. Now the only problem is this won't compile because I just said I have access to the style that I don't actually have. I guess that means I just need to do style main. Oh, and I need to actually pass it. Alright, let's see. That just compiled, right? Yep. Okay, so one thing I want to change is I no longer want it to do that. I want default to mean the default it would have been if there had not been a highlight. Okay, so now you can see that my keywords and stuff are all retaining their original color, which is maybe kind of a cool way to do this. And then what we can play with is say, well, first of all, if we go to do, that's done. And then There we go. There was one other thing I wanted to play with before moving on. Just for fun, I want to go here and I want to drop this dramatically. See how it feels. See, if it was like at that level, it would actually be pretty cool. Don't you think? Still a bit busy this way, but not horribly. And what if I did the same thing but with lines instead of ranges? Or, well, line ranges instead of character ranges? Now that could definitely be the one. I even like it in the dark theme. Sweet. Cool. Okay. So, let's switch gears now and take care of this thing real quick, because that's feeling pretty important to me. I don't want to forget about it right before this is done. So, that's under Dynamic Variables, Reset. Yeah, so that's calling free all keys, which is not actually what I should be doing. What I want to be doing is calling lifetime object just like clear keys, right? And so this is not actually going to delete any of the keys out of me. Wait, hold on. How does this work? Lifetime free. Yeah, we don't want that at all. We don't want that at all. Each key we visit, all we want to do is clear its contents. Alright, so whoops. All we have to do to test that is build, jump to error. Okay, we see some errors. Alright, alright. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to say build again. Okay, who said anything about free key? Oh, so end file needs to call clear, but separately, why is this failing? Okay, something went wrong when we reset the object at some point, or I actually don't even know what that is. Okay, let's track that down. That could be important. Well, obviously it's important. It's a crash. It's a crash that's triggered just by rebuilding, in fact. So it frees all keys. During free all keys, it iterates to the one key it has, and then it comes into here. This one key has two members. One of those two members doesn't know that the key exists. Not sure how that ever happened. Freeing the object. The lifetime object we're trying to free has the information. It's the other one that's missing it. Okay, let's try and track down what this workspace connects back to. User type says 1. What type of thing is that? Unassociated. Okay, it's user created then. So it is getting cleared. Okay. So this is being caused by the clear stuff. So let's find out. What happens at this point? I see what the problem is. It's right freaking here. What is this? Why are we struggling so much, 4coder? I went full screen, or I maximized, but what's the holdup? Okay, how did we end up in a situation where our stride size from last... Oh, what is this? What is the take rule here? It's all zeros. Okay. Really? Who made such a thing? I mean, we're obviously not going to allow that to be a problem anyway, but... Yeah, somehow I don't understand why that exists. Alright. Let me see if I can just guard against it real quick and see in the API who's doing that. So we want to go to set take rule, enable virtual whitespace, and what we want to do is, while we're looking at this, take rule dot look at types.h. Take rule. There's a couple limits I never bothered to type in here that I should do. First index equals clamp bottom take rule dot first index 0. Take rule dot take count. Wait, that should be 0. Take count per step equals clamp bottom 1 take count per step. Take rule dot step stride in marker count equals clamp bottom take rule take count per step step stride in marker count. Does that prevent the problem we just saw? And while we're at it, can we just show me when that happens? I don't actually believe this is getting called with zeros. I believe that somehow we're getting uninitialized nonsense. Hey, what do you know? It is getting called. Take rule. What? Why did you assert if take count per step isn't 0? All of this code agrees that take rule dot take count per step is not 0. I see. I said assert equals 0, but I was trying to catch the case word equals 0. I wanted to assert when it does not equal 0, obviously. Brain fart. Usually you don't use asserts in order to get it to trigger at the time you want. Use it to make sure it doesn't trigger when at a bad time. So it's like my brain was in backwards. Goofy foot mode. Now what? Okay, yeah, somehow we're just getting one that's bad. I don't even know how this is happening. It's now happening right away on startup. Okay, it's at priority 4000. Not sure how slot ID and gen ID can be 0. That sounds impossible. But this is garbage. 6088, that's not a type. These are not useful colors. The only thing that's real here is priority and like one pass last take index looks kind of real, but I don't even know why it would be because this is all garbage, so maybe it's not. Owner ID looks real and prev looks real. Okay, let me try a couple things to make sure I'm not forgetting any details. Yeah, so we clear it to 0 when we first get it, and then we fill it up with this list and we immediately put slots in there. The allocator is immediately cleared to 0 upon its birth. Ooh, are we calling that at a time we shouldn't? Yeah, we are. We can't actually do that, so let me take a look here. I'm not sure that that would exactly explain the things we're seeing, but it's definitely a bug that was there. And now, of course, nothing will compile correctly because we have this mem thing in the way that we can't use for them clear without also having to spam it out all the goddamn place. Okay, so let's get back to tracking down this bug. It obviously has something to do with some shit that happens when we use the clear call. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right there. Surprise, surprise, everything runs correctly for the first frame. We find the object we're looking for and clear all keys. Is there something I'm missing about these keys? Is it bad to leave them around like this for some other reason? I see what I should have done. Three-hour stream. I might even push us all the way to 4 hours before I wrap this one up. I'm feeling it. So, now what's the deal? Let's go back to this. Still not expecting it to run correctly. So we're going to take a look again at what happens right here. That is super wrong. We clear its contents, and now let's see. The var block is back to an empty var block. The mem bank is empty and ready to get filled up. Visuals allocator is empty and ready to get filled up. Object ID to object putter. Why would that have an item in it still? That seems wrong, doesn't it? Alright, so we just clear the table to 0 when we're doing a clear contents. That also needs to get cleared. Okay. Okay, there we go. I'm confident now I'm properly clearing that crap. Okay. Pretty sure we just were suffering from having a couple of lingering pieces of crap, whatever I'm thinking of. We were having like lingering pointers to data that still looked real, and then we would iterate it and then hit a part where it was not real anymore and give us crap. Okay. So now what I want to do is, I just noticed another little issue that's come up since we switched how text is handled when we set the look of a visual. So when we do this, we don't want to say default because that will not do the right thing. If I set it on the cursor, then I want to do symbolic color from palette stag at cursor. Let's see. Just realize we don't have to be doing all this get theme stuff all the time anyway. I mean, I only implemented the symbolic colors for text colors so far, but there's no reason I couldn't just do it for both. So I'm going to go back and do that. Technically, I actually screwed it up, but it's okay because I'm remembering right now. Get render markers. Get visual markers. There it is. Okay. There we go. Color and text color both do the symbolic lookup thing, and if we wanted to, we could even make the color thing if that's a 1, it does that. If it's a 0, it does that. Yeah, okay. I think that this is it. Sweet. Okay. I want to test the text at color or color at text, the text color thing with a symbolic constant still. I guess it's already using symbolic constants with stag properly. I just want to do one more thing with it. Then right here. Doesn't matter with mark color. Could I, instead of doing this, pass in symbolic color transparent, and then have this do pop 2. Neat. Okay. Okay. Well, we're a little bit low on steam at this point, I have to say. This is a bit too much to do in just Saturday, I bet. I mean, how much did we get done today? We got done... Okay, we got done all of this today. 1, 2, 3, like Take, rule, and priority were big new things. We upgraded all the range stuff. We added line ranges. We added text color. We did symbolic colors, and I fixed up a little bit of a standing issue with the scopes stuff. So that's actually quite a bit. All of these will be nice and quick. This and this and this are all kind of the same thing, and we'll be able to get that done in an hour or two of work. Reload all out-of-sync files is a very easy command to write. Jump to command definition won't be too hard. This will take the most time tomorrow. And then I'll do this during the weekend. Okay, I am confident that we can do this. This will take a solid chunk of time. This will take a big chunk of time. And the rest of these are all very quick to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's sort it like this. I want this done first and foremost. Then I want this done. Well, actually, these are the must do everything above. Okay. Yeah, that'll be reasonable. So that's it for me today. Thanks everyone who came to hang out at some point today. It's been fun. We've got a lot done. 4coder's looking really crazy sometimes. I think before I say goodbye, the last thing I'd like to do is just give you another chance to take a look at this. We'll say goodbye on this note. I don't know, let's pick a different thing to look at. Let's look at the check that out. That is so cool. There we go. There's a nice complicated one. Alright folks, thanks for hanging out. Later.